Okay, so have you ever wondered if guys and girls should be like approaching dating, like differently?
It's a question that comes up a lot, and the material we have for this deep dive is notes for a potential podcast episode titled Dating Dynamics. Do strategies differ by gender?
Oh, wow. So someone out there is like really trying to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, they are.
And it makes you think, like, why is this even a question?
Exactly.
What does it even say about what we expect from each other when it comes to, romance and all that?
It really does make you think about societal expectations
For sure.
and how they kind of play into all of this.
Totally. Okay, so before we get too deep into it, I think we should define dating strategies, right? I'm
Yeah.
not talking about like a crazy playbook or anything. It's more like think about how you act when you're interested in someone.
Yeah, like, do you make the first move?
Right.
Are you super direct, or do you play it cool?
Mm.
Even just, where do you meet potential partners?
Yeah, all that stuff.
All of those choices, whether you're conscious of them or not, those are your dating strategies.
That makes sense. Okay, so the first perspective we're going to look at is like all about leaning into those classic gender roles.
Yeah.
Like men should be the pursuers and all that.
Mm-hmm. Like the traditional idea of men being bold and women being more subtle.
Yeah.
It can be traced back to these like deeply ingrained societal expectations
For sure.
that men should be the assertive ones in dating and women should be more passive.
Yeah. And let's be honest, that feels a little outdated, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure, in 2024.
Yeah.
It's definitely more complex than that.
Right.
But those expectations can be sneaky.
Totally.
Like we absorb them from everywhere. Movies, family dynamics, even just observing other couples.
It's true.
It's not always a conscious choice to follow those roles.
Mm-hmm.
But they're definitely part of the cultural soup we're all swimming in.
You know what? That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Okay, so there's this historical context we're dealing with, but then there's also the reality that different genders can have different concerns when it comes to dating, especially around safety, right?
Absolutely. And this isn't about dwelling on negatives or anything,
Right.
but it is a factor that shapes how people approach dating.
Yeah,
And it can definitely differ for men and women.
totally.
Like, think about online dating, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Someone might be more hesitant to meet up in person right away.
Makes sense.
And their reasons for that might be influenced by their experiences and societal expectations around gender.
For sure. Okay, so we've got these ingrained roles and safety concerns potentially pushing towards these gendered strategies.
Yeah.
But wait, there's a whole other side to this, right?
Yeah.
The folks saying, nope, forget all that, let's just be ourselves.
Exactly. The counter argument here is all about individuality. They're basically saying that trying to fit everyone into these gender boxes ignores the beautiful diversity of human personality.
Right.
Like, you can't just assume that all men want to chase and all women want to be
I
chased.
just like throw those Mars and Venus books out the window.
Exactly. And I think this perspective reflects this larger shift we're seeing where modern relationships are increasingly defined by breaking free from these rigid expectations.
Yeah.
There's more emphasis on open communication,
Mm-hmm.
shared decision-making,
Yeah.
and just like being true to yourself regardless of what tradition dictates.
Totally. So instead of playing the game, it's about finding someone who like genuinely vibes with who you are.
Exactly.
And vice versa, which makes total sense to me. But it does make you think, like, if we're moving towards this more equal playing field,
Yeah.
do separate strategies even make sense anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
The argument here is that ditching those gender-based assumptions could actually lead to more authentic and fulfilling connections.
Because you're both starting from a place of, like, genuine self-expression instead of playing some predetermined role.
Right.
Maybe there's less room for, like, miscommunication and more space for, genuine connection.
Exactly.
Right.
And it also ties into this bigger point they make about equality.
Okay.
Like, dating, ideally, should be about mutual respect, where both people feel empowered to express their needs and expectations openly.
Which honestly sounds like a much healthier foundation for any relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got the separate strategy side, the be yourself side.
Right?
And thankfully, it sounds like the source isn't telling us to pick a winner.
No, they're not.
They're advocating for, like, finding a balance,
Mm-hmm.
not in the sense of, like, men do this, women do that, but
Right.
in the sense of, like being mindful of how societal expectations might be influencing you, while also prioritizing open communication and personal authenticity.
Exactly.
So it's like acknowledging that these expectations exist. They're part of our history, but they don't have to dictate how we like move forward.
Right.
So instead of following a script, it's more about having a conversation, right? About what works for both people,
Exactly.
which probably saves a lot of headaches down the line.
I think so.
So where does that leave us?
Right.
What are some like practical things that people can actually do to navigate all of this?
The source material gives some really solid advice.
Okay, let's hear it.
First up, self-reflection.
Oh yeah, the classic, like, know thyself.
Exactly. It all starts with understanding your own dating style,
Mm-hmm.
your comfort level, your boundaries.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in a partner?
Yeah.
What are your non-negotiables?
Right, and maybe even, like, what are your own biases or assumptions?
Oh, for sure.
Because we all have those,
Yeah.
right? It's about being aware of how those might be, like, influencing your approach, even subconsciously.
Exactly. And that awareness is key because it allows you to approach dating with more intention and authenticity.
I like that.
And speaking of knowing your limits, the source is a big advocate for setting boundaries.
Which makes total sense. Boundaries are crucial in any relationship, but especially in dating. Like, it's about knowing what you're comfortable with and communicating that clearly,
Yeah.
even early on.
It can feel awkward,
For sure.
especially when you're just getting to know someone.
Yeah.
But being upfront about your expectations and needs ultimately sets a foundation of respect and can save you from, like, potentially messy situations down the line.
Right, right. Okay, so self-reflection, boundaries. What else is in this, like, dating survival toolkit?
The last big piece of advice they give is to stay open-minded.
Okay.
Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
People evolve. Circumstances change. And what might not have worked for you in the past could be totally different in the future.
Yeah. It's like, don't get stuck in a rut, right?
Really?
Be willing to try new things, step outside your comfort zone, and maybe even challenge some of your own preconceived notions.
Yeah, and that willingness to adapt
Yeah.
can lead to some really amazing discoveries.
Totally.
Because remember, dating isn't about finding a carbon copy of yourself.
Right.
It's about discovering someone who complements and challenges you in all the right ways.
It's about finding that that balance between staying true to yourself and being open to, like, new possibilities.
Exactly.
Which honestly sounds like pretty solid advice for life in general.
Oh, for sure.
Not just dating.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this whole strategies thing.
Yeah.
Do you think they're ultimately, like, harmless?
Mm.
Even if they're not, like, ideal?
Yeah.
Or could they actually be hindering people from finding genuine connection?
That's a good question. I mean, on the one hand, if someone's rocking a certain approach
Yeah.
and it's working for them,
Yeah.
who are we to judge?
Exactly.
But on the other hand, if these preconceived notions about how men should act or how
Yeah.
women should act are actually preventing people from being their true selves,
Right.
that's a problem.
It's like they're playing a role instead of being authentic,
Right.
which never leads to anything good.
No, it doesn't.
And I think that's where communication is key.
It is.
Even if you start with, like, some assumptions about dating,
Yeah.
if you're willing to be open and honest with your partner, those assumptions can evolve.
Absolutely. It's about seeing each other as individuals,
Mm.
not just representatives of a gender.
I love that.
And being willing to have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations about what you want and what you need.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's do a little thought experiment here.
Ah.
Imagine we could wave a magic wand and make all these societal expectations around dating, poof, disappear.
Yeah.
How do you think things would change?
Oh, wow.
Would these gendered patterns still pop up?
Huh.
Or would it be like a whole new ballgame?
That's a fascinating question.
Right.
My guess is that even without those explicit pressures,
Yeah.
we'd still see some patterns emerge,
Okay.
not because they're inherently male or female, but because of how we're socialized from a young age.
Right.
Those early influences can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, even if we erased all the shoulds and shouldn'ts overnight, it would take time to, like, unlearn those ingrained behaviors. But I also think we'd see a lot more experimentation
Yeah,
and a much wider range of, like, dating styles emerge.
for sure.
People would feel freer to, express themselves without fear of judgment.
It would be like a giant social experiment.
Right.
We get to see what happens when people are truly free to define their own dating journeys, unconstrained by those societal norms.
Which I think brings us back to what the source material is ultimately getting at.
Yeah.
It's not about dictating a specific set of rules, but about encouraging a more open and authentic approach to dating,
Exactly.
where individuals can connect based on, like, who they truly are.
And isn't that what we all want at the end of the day?
Totally.
To find someone who sees us,
Yeah.
accepts us,
Yeah.
and loves us for who we truly are.
Quirks and all.
Quirks and all.
Absolutely. Sometimes that means, like, letting go of the scripts and expectations we've been carrying around and having the courage to, like, write our own love stories.
Beautifully said.
Okay, so before we wrap up this this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something that really resonated with me in the source material.
Okay.
They mentioned that regardless of your stance on these gendered dating strategies, there's one thing everyone should prioritize: self-reflection.
Which makes total sense.
Right.
Like, before you can even begin to figure out what approach feels right for you, you need to understand yourself.
Yeah.
What are your values?
Right.
Your needs, your boundaries? What are you truly looking for in a partner?
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, what makes you feel happy and fulfilled?
Because at the end of the day, those are the questions that will guide you to the relationships that are right for you. Regardless of any, like, societal expectations or external pressures.
It's about honoring your own unique journey.
Yeah.
And trusting that the right people will appreciate you for it.
So ditch the rule book and embrace the adventure, right?
Exactly. And with that, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this this first part of our deep dive into dating dynamics.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about.
For sure. So we've been talking about whether dating strategies should, like, differ based on gender. And it's clear there's no easy answer.
For sure.
But it's interesting to me that even the question itself, like, reveals so much about our cultural baggage, you know?
Totally. Like, we're still grappling with these old school ideas about how men and women should behave.
Yeah.
Even if we're trying to move beyond them. It's like this invisible script we're all handed, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, like, how much of our behavior in dating is actually driven by those ingrained expectations versus our genuine desires. You know?
Totally. Like, are we making choices because they feel authentic to us?
Yeah.
Or because we think it's what we're supposed to do? I feel like that self-awareness piece is huge.
Absolutely. And I think one way to get more clarity on that is to examine how things have shifted in recent years.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, modern relationships are kind of evolving away from those rigid gender roles.
Totally. I mean, think about how much the dating landscape itself has changed, even just in the last decade.
Oh, yeah.
Online dating, social media, the way we communicate, it's all so different now.
It's completely different. And that's had a major impact on relationships. There's less emphasis on traditional courtship rituals and more emphasis on, like, individual choice and open communication.
So how does that tie back to these dating strategies?
Yeah.
Are they becoming less relevant in this, like, new landscape?
It's tricky because, like, while societal expectations are loosening, they haven't completely disappeared.
Right.
People are still influenced by, you know, what they see in movies, what their families taught them, even just observing other couples.
Yeah, it's like those expectations are, like, woven into the fabric of our culture, even if we're trying to stitch a new pattern, you know?
Exactly. So even if someone wants to approach dating in a completely different way, they might feel like internal resistance or pressure to conform to those norms.
It's almost like there's this internal battle between what society tells us to do and what feels authentic to us.
Right. And that's where self-reflection becomes so crucial. It's about examining your own beliefs and behaviors. And asking yourself, is this really me? Or am I just performing a role?
Which is easier said than done, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like, unpacking all that baggage can be tough.
It can be really tough.
But it's so worth it because when you can identify those, like, ingrained expectations, you can start to consciously choose how you want to approach dating.
Exactly.
So instead of blindly following a script, you're creating your own story.
You're writing your own story. I love that.
I love that analogy too.
Yeah.
And part of writing that story is
Hmm.
being honest with yourself about what you want and what you need in a partner,
Yes.
and then having the courage to like communicate that openly, right?
Absolutely.
Which honestly feels a lot more empowering than
Oh, yeah.
trying to guess what the other person wants.
Yeah.
Or playing mind games or all that.
It really is.
Okay, so we've talked about how modern relationships are kind of changing the game and how self-awareness is like key.
Yeah.
But let's get it like even more practical here.
Go.
What are some specific things people can do to navigate this whole dating strategies dilemma?
Well, the source material offers some great advice.
Let's hear it.
And one thing that really stands out is the importance of understanding your attachment style.
Okay, I've heard of attachment styles before,
Yeah.
but refresh my memory, what are they all about?
Basically, attachment styles describe how we tend to relate to others in intimate relationships.
Go.
They're formed in early childhood based on our interactions with our caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
but they continue to influence us throughout our lives.
So it's like a blueprint for like how we approach love and connection.
Exactly. There are 4 main attachment styles.
Okay.
Secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful avoidant.
Got it.
Each style has its own like unique set of strengths and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding your own style can be incredibly helpful in dating.
Makes sense. If you know your tendencies, you can be more aware of how they might be like influencing your behavior
Yeah.
and choices in dating.
Exactly. So how can someone figure out their attachment style?
Yeah, how do you even know?
There are lots of resources online,
Okay.
including quizzes and articles.
Okay.
But even just reflecting on past relationships can give you some clues.
Yeah.
Like, for example, do you tend to get clingy
Mm-hmm.
or worry about being abandoned?
Yeah.
Or do you tend to, like, pull away when things get too close?
I think we all have a little bit of everything in us,
Yeah,
depending on the situation.
for sure.
But it's probably helpful to like recognize those patterns so you can address them in a healthy way.
Exactly. And understanding your attachment style can also help you identify potential red flags in partners.
Oh, okay.
Like, for example, if you tend to be anxious,
Yeah.
you might be drawn to people who are avoidant,
Okay.
which can create a lot of drama and heartache.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So knowing your attachment style can help you make like more informed choices
Yeah.
in dating. What other practical advice does the source material offer?
Another key point they emphasize is the importance of setting boundaries.
Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. We keep coming back to this.
I know, right?
But it's clearly important. So how can people get better at setting those boundaries, especially in the context of dating?
Well, it starts with knowing your non-negotiables,
Okay.
the values and behaviors that are like absolutely essential to you in a relationship.
Yeah.
Once you're clear on those,
Mm-hmm.
you can start communicating them clearly and directly to potential partners.
It's like that saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Exactly.
Like boundaries are all about respecting yourself and what you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be tough to like enforce those boundaries,
Oh, yeah.
especially early on in dating.
It can be really tough. It's natural to want to please the other person,
Right.
avoid conflict.
Yeah.
But remember, setting boundaries isn't about being controlling or demanding.
Okay.
It's about protecting your well-being
Mm-hmm.
and ensuring that the relationship is built on this foundation of mutual respect.
And if someone isn't willing to respect your boundaries,
Yeah.
that's probably a major red flag.
Huge red flag.
Yeah.
It's a sign that they might not be the right fit for you,
Right.
no matter how much you like them.
Okay, so self-reflection, attachment styles, boundaries. What else should we add to our like dating toolkit?
The last piece of advice I want to highlight is the importance of being present and mindful in your interactions.
So ditch the distractions and
Yeah.
like actually pay attention to the person you're with.
Exactly. In today's world,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to get caught up in our phones,
Right.
our to-do lists, our social media feeds.
Totally.
But when you're dating, it's crucial to make that conscious effort to be fully present
Yeah.
with the other person.
Put the phone down, make eye contact, actually listen to what they're saying.
Exactly.
It sounds simple, but I feel like it makes a huge difference.
It really does. Being present allows you to like connect on a deeper level,
Mm-hmm.
to pick up on those subtle cues, and to truly get to know the other person.
Plus, it shows that you're genuinely interested and invested, which is always a good thing.
It's always a good thing.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Self-reflection, attachment styles, boundaries, being present. It's like a crash course in mindful dating.
It really is.
And remember, all of this advice applies,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of your gender
Yeah.
or your dating strategy.
Exactly. It's about cultivating self-awareness, healthy communication,
Yeah.
and a deep respect for yourself and others.
So ditch the rule book, embrace the journey,
Yeah.
and trust that the right connections will come your way.
Beautifully said.
Okay, that's a wrap for part 2 of our deep dive into dating dynamics. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into dating dynamics.
We are.
And I feel like we've uncovered so much already.
It's been a really interesting conversation.
It has. It really has. And it's amazing how much we can uncover when we, really examine all those unspoken rules and expectations around dating.
Right. It goes even deeper than just gendered strategies.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about societal pressures, cultural norms, even our own personal baggage that we bring to the table.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, one of the most powerful takeaways from all of this is that we have, more agency than we might realize.
Okay.
We don't have to be puppets of those external forces. We can actually choose to, rewrite the script, you know?
I love that, rewrite the script.
Yeah.
It's like taking ownership of your dating destiny
Right.
and saying, hey, this is how I want to do things.
But where do you even start with that?
Well, the source material offers a really interesting framework for thinking about this.
Okay.
They talk about the importance of developing your dating philosophy.
Ooh, a dating philosophy. Tell me more.
So it's basically about getting clear on your values, your priorities, and what you ultimately want out of relationships.
Okay.
It's a compass that guides your choices
Okay.
and helps you navigate the often choppy waters of dating.
So instead of getting swept away by, trends or societal pressures, you're anchored in, your own beliefs and intentions. That sounds incredibly empowering.
It is empowering, and developing your dating philosophy involves asking yourself some tough questions.
Like what?
Like, what kind of relationship do you truly desire?
Okay.
What are your non-negotiables? What are you willing to compromise on?
And maybe even, what are your deal breakers?
Oh, for sure.
Because let's be real, we all have those, right?
We all have them.
Identifying those early on can save you a lot of, time and energy.
So much time and energy.
Right.
It's about being honest with yourself about what you're truly looking for and not settling for anything less.
Okay, so you've got your dating philosophy figured out. You're clear on your values, your boundaries. What's next?
So then it becomes about how you actually put this into practice.
Okay.
And one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal is your communication style.
And this is where things can get tricky.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to navigate those gendered expectations we've been talking about.
Right. Like, how do you balance being assertive and direct with being respectful and considerate?
Right. Is there a magic formula?
I wish there was a magic formula, but communication is an art, not a science.
Yeah.
And it takes practice, especially in the context of dating.
Totally. So what are some, tips for communicating effectively in dating? Because let's be real, it's not always easy to have those, tough conversations.
No, it's not.
Especially when you're just, getting to know someone.
One of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard is to focus on I statements.
Okay, so instead of, blaming or accusing the other person,
Yeah.
you're expressing your own feelings and needs. Clearly and directly.
Exactly. It's less likely to put the other person on the defensive.
That makes sense, yeah.
And it also helps you, stay true to your own experience.
All right.
You're not trying to interpret their behavior or intentions or anything.
Right.
You're simply stating how you feel.
Okay, so statements are a good starting point.
Yeah.
What else can we add to our communication toolkit?
Active listening is another crucial skill.
Okay.
And it's not just about hearing the words the other person is saying.
Right.
It's about truly paying attention to their body language, their tone of voice,
Yeah.
the emotions behind their words.
So basically, put your phone down.
Yeah.
Make eye contact. Actually be present in the conversation.
Exactly. It's about creating a space
Yeah.
where both people feel heard,
Yeah.
seen, and understood.
And that kind of connection is, the foundation of any healthy relationship.
It really is.
And it also helps build trust, right?
Mhm.
Because if you feel like someone is like truly listening to you,
Yeah,
you're more likely to open up and be like vulnerable with them.
absolutely. And that vulnerability is where the magic happens.
Yeah, we like.
It's where real intimacy is born.
Okay, I'm loving this. It's like we're building this like roadmap for healthy communication in dating.
Mm-hmm.
What else should we add to the mix?
Another tip I find helpful is to focus on asking open-ended questions.
Okay.
So instead of just asking yes or no questions,
Right.
you're inviting the other person to elaborate,
Mm-hmm.
share more deeply.
It's like you're like peeling back the layers
Yeah.
and getting to know them on a more like authentic level.
Exactly. And it also shows that you're genuinely curious
Yeah.
and interested in learning more about them.
Which goes back to what we were talking about earlier about being present
Yeah.
and engaged in the moment.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think statements,
Yeah.
active listening,
Mhm.
open-ended questions.
Yes.
I'm feeling much more equipped to handle these like communication challenges now.
I love that.
Yeah, but you're right. It's all about practice.
It is.
The more you use these tools,
Yeah,
the more natural and comfortable they'll become,
for sure.
and the more fulfilling your relationships will be,
Mm,
both, romantic and platonic.
absolutely.
Okay, so before we wrap up this incredible deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about societal expectations and how they can like influence our dating choices.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we flipped the script?
Right.
What if those expectations completely disappeared?
Mm.
How would you approach dating differently?
Oh, wow.
Would you be bolder,
Mm.
more vulnerable, more open to like different types of connections?
It's a fascinating question.
It really is. It forces us to like confront our own
Yeah.
internalized beliefs and desires,
Mm.
separate from what society might be telling us.
Absolutely.
So I encourage you, dear listener, to take some time to reflect on that.
Yeah.
What does your ideal dating landscape look like?
Mm.
And how can you start creating that for yourself?
Yeah.
Even within like the constraints of the real world.
Because we do have more power than we realize
Right.
to shape our own dating experiences.
Totally. It starts with self-awareness,
Mm.
courage,
Yeah.
and a willingness to like challenge the status quo.
I love that.
So ditch the rule book,
Mm.
embrace the unknown,
Yeah.
and trust that the journey will lead you exactly where you're meant to be.
Beautifully said. And with that, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into dating dynamics.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Yeah.
Until next time, happy dating, everyone.
Bye,